Hi everybody, welcome to Creative Katie's Mixed Media Technique Tag series. Today's technique, plastic wrap technique. It's number 11. Just a quick warning, I got a bit carried away with this technique and all the possible variations. I've kept it pretty much real time as there's lots of information to share, but click on the gear and you can speed it up for yourself. Hit the subscribe button and you won't miss any upcoming videos. Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Birchall, and today we're getting ready to do the next mixed media technique tag technique. And again, we are in the same category. We are in the pattern category and texture. And you know, you're going to get visual texture, you can get, depending on the medium you use, you can get some physical texture, but you're also going to get some patterning going on your thing. And what technique we are going to use is the technique of using plastic wrap. Now, 3 years ago when I started getting absorbed into Pinterest, I was drawn into all the watercolor pictures, and for about a year I did watercolor, and that's where I first learned about the plastic wrap technique. And I created cards using the plastic wrap technique, and you can see on this card I've used watercolors and the plastic wrap technique. Same thing on the background of this card. There's some stamping on there that you may be seeing, but there's also the plastic wrap using watercolor paints. So it was no surprise to me that you know, you can use this technique in acrylics, and you can probably have seen other videos where people have used acrylic paints and use the plastic wrap technique. The way that I'm doing it is going to be slightly different than her. But before we go on to doing it on mixed media paper, what I want to do is do a tag on watercolor paper. Sometimes people are doing their tags on watercolor paper. They are doing their ATCs on watercolor paper, or they'd even do their mixed media projects on watercolor paper. So I just pulled out some. Now it's a little stained here, so you know, I'm just kind of using something. Now I'm just going to use the traditional watercolor for this, for the purposes of this example. So I'm just going to spray this a little, get this wet, and I'm spraying my paints, and I'm also getting some plastic wrap ready to go. You really don't want to have to start scrambling and fighting with the plastic wrap roll. And you need a wider piece than what you're putting on, because you're going to be, you want to get it all crinkled up. So just now that some of that is going to reactivate, I'm just going to stop it from reactivating as much as I can. Now on watercolor paper, it's just straight on the watercolor paper. There's no application of gesso on this for this purpose. So, and I'm just going to stick with one straight color, just for the purpose of this tag. Now I'm just going to crinkle this up somewhat and apply it down. And you want the wrinkles, you want to get kind of that broken glass kind of effect. So you got some darks and some lights, and then you just need to pick this up and put it off. And this one pretty much has to dry because the water and everything is going to soak down. So we're going to now use this technique with dilutions paints and other acrylic paints. So I'm going to get the plastic wrap ready. I'm going to just rip off a sheet so that I have it at the ready. And you want more than the size because you are going to kind of crinkle it up. So I'm just going to put these on here, and I'm going to use the same colors just so that the tag goes together. Now, while this technique is going to work with both of these products, the sheen that you get may be different. With the Inktense blocks, you tend to get a more matte finished. So I'm just going to activate the pigment. Now again, the gesso is underneath this, and it is on a white gessoed surface. Just gonna get a little bit more. Stronger pigment, and again, that's personal. And then you're going to simply do, now you want the wrinkles, so and you wrinkle this up. Now I don't ever really let it dry completely. I let it dry to almost to the point of dry, and I peel it off when it's not going to start moving back into itself, and then I hit it with a heat tool as I'm unveiling it, so to speak. So that's kind of what I've been doing with all my products. Okay, so there, and you can see some of that shine. And now, when you're using distress crayons, your Inktense blocks, your mermaid markers, your Neocolor 2s, anything that's water activated, you're going to have gesso underneath. What you could also do is you have a background that is permanent, so you could have a colored acrylic underneath it. You aren't going to be able to add layers, which we're going to explore with the acrylic paint, because being water activated, as soon as you put the next layer on, you are going to reactivate, and you might end up with a mess. So if you want something other than white to shine through in the cracks from the white gesso from the background, what you need to do is you paint it with something that's permanent. So dilutions paints, or any of those, any acrylic, craft paint, Liquitex Basics, whatever you have. So that's all I'm going to do with the distress crayons and the water soluble products. I do want to say in the other video, I do the Neocolor 2s, I do the plastic wrap technique with the gelatos. So you can look there to see the effect. And definitely, if that's a product that you have and you're curious as to what it's going to do, absolutely do one of your tags or part of your tag with that technique. Okay, so unfortunately, didn't turn on the camera. I took off the plastic wrap off the one that we did with the Distress crayons and the Inktense blocks. Now it wasn't completely dry, but as I pulled it off, and hopefully you'll get to see that with a different one, because I personally like the effect without letting it sit overnight. I pulled it off and then I just hit it with the heat tool. Do not put the heat tool on the plastic wrap because that is going to melt your plastic wrap. So I just pulled it off and you can see the texture. So this one was with the Distress crayons. Now it's lighter than the Inktense blocks, but that might be not because of the product, it might be just because of the amount of pigment that I got on there. I may have just put more pigment in this. So this one was white gesso, and that's why you kind of see the white through it. And this one was with Inktense blocks. And depending on the color and, you know, every time you do it, you are going to end up with a different combination. Now, for the rest of the tags that we're going to do, we are going to do it with acrylic paints. And again, this will work with your regular craft paints, your Liquitex Basics, Golden if that's what you have, Dina Wakley, any of those paints. So, you know, and I'm going to use some craft paint. I want to try it with dilutions because I've never done it with dilutions. And I just want to show you the effect. Now, that you can get. So I have a couple of art journal pages where I've used that technique to develop the background. So the background, the red background here of the snowman, is a very subtle use of the saran wrap technique or plastic wrap technique. I white gesso, then I let that dry, put on the red acrylic paint, and I put on the saran wrap. Now this didn't get deep grooves and edges, and you can see that it's kind of a matte finish. Here is another one where I've used the background, and I had the background had been stamped a little bit with some script stamp and some bubble stamp as well. So I've added another layer of interest, but basically it's white gessoed, and then you can see kind of that broken glass look from using the saran wrap or plastic wrap. Now, if you've seen this, in all likelihood, you may have come across a video by Cat Hand using the plastic wrap technique. And in a lot of ways, it's very similar, but she leaves it to dry overnight. And when you leave it to dry overnight, something happens. And I'm not going to do that for this video because you can go watch hers. But what happens, and I don't know if you can see, is it kind of gets this hard, shiny surface, and you get more physical texture. So this was, I just had different colors of acrylic paints on here, and then I put the plastic wrap on, and I let it dry overnight, and then the next day I stenciled over it with the black. But you can see kind of the broken glass, and it's actually physically, there is texture there. So if you want physical texture as well, leave it overnight, but it does get that kind of, it almost looks like it's turned to plastic, which of course acrylic paint is. If that's the effect you want, then you need to let it dry overnight. Now, probably because I'm impatient, I don't like to let it dry overnight. So the texture I get is more matte and it's not as physical, and you don't get that shiny, plasticky kind of look, which, you know, again, it's personal preference. So what we're going to do is use some acrylic paint on here, and we're going to use kind of different backgrounds, and then we're going to explore some things that I've never done, but since the Technique Tag series is all about exploring and experimenting, we're going to do that. So for this tag, we are going to use Dilutions paints, and I'm going to mix paints because that's kind of what I do. And I'm going to use some deco art. I've got Martha Stewart here, I've got Americana, I have Delta Ceramic Coat in my craft paint stash. So one half I'm going to do this, one half I'm going to do that. And just to make, again, I want to have the saran wrap ready to put on. Now the acrylic is going to be thicker than the watercolor, so that's going to build a little bit more texture. So we're just going to put that on. And I've never done this with my acrylic paints or my Dilutions paints. Just hasn't happened yet, you know. Oops, dirty brush. I'm just gonna spray a little bit of water and get this moving. Now again, if the paint is thicker, it's going to give a different look than if you've thinned it down. So you can play with that to get the effect that you personally like. Now this one we're putting onto white gesso. So the cracks appearing through whatever colors we have, whoops, we're just gonna, that oily stuff. Put some Martha Stewart pearlized paint because, well, you know me, I like my shimmer. And just spray it a bit. Okay. In there. So then we're just going to take the saran wrap. I kind of pre-crinkle it because I want to get okay, so now we're just going to let this sit for a while for most of the water to absorb, but I do not wait till it completely dries. Okay, so this is the one with the Distress or Dilutions paints on the top and the Americana down below, but it was thicker paint. So I'm just going to pull it off. And if you can zoom in, you can see the subtle texture that's there. The paint is not rolling into each other, but you're getting a more subtle look. So this is where I would dry it. So you kind of have to watch. Again, as Cat Hand in her video talked about, you can let this dry overnight, and then you get that, it turns almost plasticky and shiny. So pick and choose. So you can see all that lovely visual texture. You don't get as much patterning maybe with this, but it does make it interesting. And as with most techniques, you may be stamping on top of this or underneath it. You might have stamped underneath it. You may be adding texture paste on top. You may be splattering. You may be doing other techniques. So there we have that one. And I would say, you know, maybe that was 5 minutes. Okay, so this one, we started with white gesso, and this was with dilutions, paints, and I'm just going to put thicker. I really didn't thin this down. And this one was with Americana and again it was thicker. So this time I'm going to use, we're going to put paint down. We're going to put a layer of acrylic paint underneath and let that dry. Now what that's going to do is when you put the top color that you put the plastic wrap on, the color, whatever color you have underneath, is going to be what you see peeking through. So while you can use color, and we will, I have already prepared one with black gesso. So in my thinking, if I put acrylic on top of this and use the plastic wrap when I do the crinkles. Now, based on this one, I'm thinking I need to get the paint a little bit thinner than what I did here. So, you know what? I'm going to use the same paints and use it, get it a little bit thinner when I apply it. Just to see and give you that information. So instead of pulling out other colors, I'm just going to still play with the same ones. And I just need to put the mark here for halfway. And because I want to get it a little bit thinner, I'm just going to put a coat of water on there so that I can easily and readily get the paint on there. Now you can get the paint mixed in a palette ahead of time, and that way you know the consistency and you don't have to play around with it as you're applying it. So it's quite a bit more watery than what I had previous. So now I'm just going to put this on this side. I'm just going to wipe this down a little bit more. And then I've got this kind of and we have the saran wrap. And I can see right now that having it that extra bit of moisture in there, adding more water, thinning it down, is definitely going to give more of the effect. So again, if you want more subtle, keep the paint thicker. Less subtle, wet it down and thin it out. So I'm just going to put this aside, and I'm keeping watch of the clock so I can tell you how long I'm letting it dry before I peel off the plastic wrap. Okay, so this is the one on the black gesso with the dilutions and the Americana, and it's probably dried about 10 minutes. And I'm just peeling it off. And then I'm just going to give it a quick dry. Now again, because it's on the black background, you're getting a different effect. Up here I have the pearlized paint, and I think that's just kind of softened it so you don't get as vivid a change. But I'm really liking down here the black peeking through. I think that can be something really interesting for a background. So you got that definite shine on the top that's making it even hard to photograph. But isn't that interesting? So I'm just going to do this card over. I think I'm going to thin it down a little bit to get more of the cracks. I don't think I got a lot of the effect that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to use the same colors and everything on the white as I did. But I'm just going to thin the paint down . A bit, and we have this kind of This is why you do it first, so that you ensure that you have it out. Because there we go. And yes, this is going to be a much better example of what you want to see. I mean, each to their own, but so we'll come back. Here's the plastic wrap that I redid with acrylic paints, and both the Dilutions and the Americana, but I thinned it down a little bit more. And as you can see right off the bat, as soon as I did it, I could tell that I'm going to get more of the broken glass effect. So just pulling that off and get a quick dry. So yeah, this is more what I would like. This is more subtle. So what we've learned here is that we do need to thin our paint. Even the Americana, which is thinner, okay, so if you were using the Liquitex Basics, you're going to have to thin it down quite a bit because that's a heavy body paint. So you can see the difference. Thicker paint, thin. Same exact color, same exact paint, just with that one learning curve. And I really like this effect. Thinned. And this is Americana. Thinned. So different effects. So now I want to experiment with this technique and see what happens if when we get to this layer, if we reapply another color and do the plastic wrap technique again. So I'm going to start with, this is fairly close to a white one. I'm just recycling my tags that did not work out. So I'm going to pick three colors, and I'm going to come back. So the plastic wrap has been on for about 5 or so minutes, and I'm just going to kind of pull it back. And dry it. Now where the paint was thicker, you have a little bit more physical texture. You can see the lovely texture that's there. the question I want to answer is what happens if we put another layer of acrylic paint in a different color on top of this and basically redo the acrylic paint. Redo the technique. So I'm going to get a piece of plastic wrap. And set that there. And I think I'm going to use the pink on here. So what I'm going to do is just actually wet it down off on the craft mat. Because I want to do this fairly quickly. And I think maybe mixing it first, you know, you try to save steps and it really doesn't save you anything. So I'm just going to put that, and I'm thinking it's kind of gotten a little too weak, maybe? I don't know. In a lot of ways, I'm just playing and exploring just like you. I don't have all the answers. Okay. I'm going to grab the plastic wrap. And we're going to let that dry a little bit and we'll be back. Okay, so for this one we had the blue, which we crinkled on with white gesso, and then we've added a layer of pink. So I'm just going to remove that and quickly set it. Oops. You can see that you do get the texture from the blue that was texturized. We use the saran wrap, and then you have the pink. So I painted the tag this teal mint color, and I have an idea that I'm going to put copper on top of it with the saran wrap. Now, I'm hoping that you get kind of that copper patina kind of look, but I have never tried it, so I do know that because this is Liquitex Basics, I'm going to have to thin it out considerably, and we'll see, because I'm thinking if you had brown underneath and then an ivory on top and you had that, it would kind of look like old weathered wood, kind of a distressed look. So this one I'm going with the hoping to get the patina look. So yeah, it's fun experimenting and trying things out. And if it works, then I can apply it and use it on a page. So I'm thinning this out because we've learned that it's really important to thin that layer out. So I'm just going to get that copper on here. So you can experiment with all sorts of different color combinations, gray with the bright fuchsia or the teal. You know, really play with it and see what good color combinations you get. You know, try just little ATC size cards, work on, you know, you can always use those as backgrounds. Do different color combos and see what you get. You're going to find something that you like. And please, please, please share those on my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media, Creative Katie. So I'm just going to do that. It's going to be a different look. I can tell right now it didn't exactly do. I don't know, maybe I thinned the paint down too much. Maybe it needed to be the reverse. Maybe the copper needed to be first. And so, having spoken that, just going to set this aside, and I am going to paint one of these copper, and then I'm going to put the green on top. So we're going to do the reverse and see. So it looks brown on the thing, but when you see that, when I turn it like that, you can really see that this is copper. And this was my Liquitex Basic. So now I'm going to put this on top, and we're going to compare it to where I've done the reverse colors. So in keeping with what we've learned, we need to thin the paint. And you can see it's very, very watery right now. So that's what I'm going for. And I have my plastic wrap. Just pressing that down and moving it around so I get, you know, what looks to be, you know, you never quite know what you're going to get. You've got that unexpected factor going on with this technique, which is nice. But then if you play with the color combos, then you can know which ones are going to work for you, which ones you like, the effect. So I'm trying to get that patina old look with these two color combos, and we're going to see how I do with that. Now again, you could do an entire background with this technique. You can do parts that you will then use as collage for parts of your pattern. For instance, if this, instead of using the jelly print, I could use this technique and you know, do this on paper and cut that out for the petals of the flowers. Or if I was doing autumn leaves, I might want, you know, I'm loving this look right here for autumn leaves, or, you know, in there for the flowers or autumn leaves. So you can use it as a whole background or as one element of your spread. So as you can see, I went a little crazy with this technique tag. There are so many variations, color combinations, color mediums that you can use. This will work with every color medium. So I started off, I'm going to zoom in, with watercolor because that's where I first learned of this technique, was just watercolor, using it on watercolor paper. And that's what we have here. And you can see the lovely effect. Now, depending on how much you crinkle it up, and with the watercolor paper, you don't put anything underneath, and it pretty much needs to dry completely before you take off the plastic wrap. It needs, you know, I've been working on these tags for about an hour and I took it off at the very end. So that is the one difference with that. And you don't get the pure white because the watercolor paper gets stained. You can use it with multiple colors and it's a lovely effect on that. Now you can use, which was our second tags here, you can use water activated products. Distress crayons, Inktense blocks, mermaid markers, Neocolor 2s, gel sticks, gelatos, all of those, including watercolor, you know, from the watercolor palette, be it, and put it on a gessoed surface. Now all of these are on a gessoed or pre-painted surface. So there's a layer that will prevent things from soaking into the paper and allows you to, with this plastic wrap, to manipulate it and get these designs. So this one at the top is with distress crayons. And the one on the bottom was the Inktense blocks. And the variation in color, as I said before, may be due to the amount of pigment that I had in there. So if you want to see other water-soluble things, the Neocolor 2s, the gel sticks, I do have another video that you can go and look at that. Now here I use Delusions paints at the top and Americana at the bottom. And I did not thin it out very much. And so you get an effect. You get some physical texture as well as visual texture. Not a whole lot of patterning. You don't really get that broken glass look that you see here that I really love so much. But when I did thin the paint down, this is the effect that you get. And this is, you know, picture perfect. This is the stained glass, broken glass kind of look. And this is again with Delusions Paints Americana. The only difference between that and this is I thinned the paint down on this one. Both were applied onto white gesso. Then I asked myself, what would happen if, because I like working with black gesso, what would happen if I applied it to black gesso? So the black gesso surface was there. This is the Americana with some metallic, and here I thinned it down. I don't know that it was thinned down quite enough. You do get some of that texture, and I'm really, really, really in love what's happening here. I can see a background with that, and that's something that I would definitely use. Putting the metallic on top of the black, I'd have to try that again. It's kind of made it kind of foggy because you really can't see the broken glass that I like so much. So on this one, what I did is I put a layer, there was gesso, put a layer of acrylic paint, applied the plastic wrap. That was the blue. Let that do its thing, dried it, put a layer of pink, and did the plastic wrap. And I hope you can see, it really adds some depth to it, and you have layers of pattern and texture on there. Again, another technique that I would like to play with, maybe different colors. Then I did an experiment of, which color do you put first? And this one, I had a teal base and I put the metallic on top. The plastic wrap went into the metallic. This one had the metallic base, the copper, and then I put the teal on top. And quite honestly, I cannot pick which one I like best. I love both of them. And I can really see using this technique on a page or a spread. So I hope you go to town. I hope you either, try different color mediums and see what you can get, or try different color combinations as well. It's lots of fun. Please come and share on my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media, Creative Katie. I love to see the different color combinations and the different mediums that people use, because every time it's a little different and we learn from everybody. I could have continued making tags all day long. The important thing is you need to thin your acrylic paint down to get this broken glass effect. If it's not, you're going to get an effect and you're going to get texture. It just may not be this. And this is what this would be the target technique right here. So I hope you go and have fun, and I will see you for the next technique tag. Bye for now.
I have some shots of the finished tags as well as some close-ups, so you can really see the texture that's there. I've included kind of a caption there that recaps what I've used and what the process was, so you can relate it to the part of the video that goes with this. Like this tag that you're seeing now, if you're running into troubles, it's probably because you did not thin the paint enough. If you're going for the broken glass effect like you see here, the key is to thin the paint down. If you mix colors, you get kind of that two-toned effect, or if you have one color, it's going to give you a different effect. Putting on black gesso or a black or different colored background. Play with those color combinations. You can layer them. We learned that we can layer them. The blue, do the technique, do the pink, do the technique. You could continued on and had even more layers of interest. Here we tried 2 different ways to see the different effects, and we also use metallic paint, which I love, love, love. Now go and experiment yourself. Go and have some fun. Try different color combinations, and be sure to come and share your combinations in my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media, Creative Katie.